Okay, so now that your floor tiles are all dry, it's time to get ready to do the grouting. Grouting is kind of a real dirty process. It's best to be really prepped before you start your grouting so that you can make it as easy on yourself as possible. In here for prep, I'm going to examine each grout joint. Areas where I've had the thin set bulge out and come up a little bit, I'm going to grind and kind of cut off with my utility knife. And I'm just going to take a look around to make sure that I've got no thin set on these edges and that this is actually ready to fill up with grout. Then I'll use some painter's masking tape to tape this line off to protect the tub and my bottom row of tiles there, just to protect those. I'll mix up my grout and I'll come in here and start showing you guys how to apply it into the grout or into the joints. For this 3/16 inch gap, I'm going to use a sanded grout. There is about 3 different types of grout that I use. I use non-sanded grout. The manufacturer that I use specifies that you don't go over like these 16th inch gaps with that grout. So I couldn't use a non-sanded grout on this floor and be following what my manufacturer recommends. On the floor, you can get the same color, but they add sand. So it's a sanded grout. It's meant for larger joints. So an epoxy grout is it's a chemical grout. I think it can go in either size joints, but it's a little harder to clean up and fairly unnecessary unless you're in like a food kitchen in a restaurant or somewhere medical where it needs to be chemically resistant. So yeah, like I said, when you get to the point where you're about to grout, you can check out the box on any grout package and it will tell you what size joints it's recommended to work on. Their measurements of their joints are just the width, and the total height of your tile is approximate the guideline to follow. So you should have no problem selecting what you need for your project at home. So I'm just going to take my knife, start up here at the wall. I can already see a section that's right here where my thin set got a little bit high, so you can see the combed out thin set right here is nice and low. That joint's gonna fill in good. But right here, I'll barely get any grout coverage, so this will show through. So I usually just take my utility knife, grind at it a little bit. Okay, so you can see that that is now quite a bit lower than where it was. So the grout is going to be able to fill in there nice and even. Once you're done going through your whole floor and making sure all those deficiencies are taken care of, which I hope that's my only one, but we'll see. Then you've got to come through with a vacuum and vacuum all the particles that may have gotten in between the grout joints. Get them all cleaned out the best you can. Then you're ready to start your prepping with your tape. Then mix your grout up and start going. Oh, so here's a real big one. Who was I kidding? I was only going to find one. But you can see this one is out past the top of the tile. So okay, so this is looking ready to go. I'm just going to do a vacuum of all the grout joints to pick up all this debris and tape my back edge and mix up my grout. One thing to keep in mind when you're looking for your areas that you need to clean up is that the grout is not necessarily going to be right flush to the top of each tile. Normally when you grout, when you're wiping it down, it kind of curves it down a little bit. So just make sure that everything is well below the surface of the tile so that you don't have any problems when you're grouting. Okay, so I've got my bathtub edge protected. If I had my finished cabinet in here and the toe kick was all finished and stuff like that, I would make sure I put some tape on that as well. Yeah, so it's like, it's not a big deal if your cabinet's in already, if that's the route you've chosen to go with your install. But just make sure it's protected from the grout. The dye that's in the grout is really able to stain even wood quite well. So just protect whatever you don't want to discolor from the grout. I'm using a charcoal black colored grout. Dries to like a really dark gray, and that's the color I've chosen, so it would definitely stain areas that I didn't want to. So just use painter's tape. When you're done grouting, you pull it off and you got a nice clean surface behind. I'm just gonna take a rag, give this floor one nice wipe down with some water, and then go mix my grout. So you gotta be real cautious when you're adding water to grout. A very little bit of extra water goes a long way. The specific grout that I'm using gives me a recommended amount of water to start with, and then you're supposed to have extra water with you to bring it to the right consistency. The right consistency with this type of mix is kind of like whipped and creamy, like a drywall mud almost. Then you let it sit for 10 more minutes, and you mix it for another round after that to break it up, but you can't add water. So the second time around. So you need to get the right consistency your first time. When it sets up for that 10 minutes, you mix it one more time. Then you can generally have a pot life of an hour or so in the pail where it can be remixed, but never adding water to the mix. It destroys the chemical something or other with the grout. But read your directions on your package very clearly. From what I've seen in the years that I've been doing this, never had any questions after reading the directions on a certain product. But if you do, most products have technical support where you can ask them your questions to find out if it's going to work for you. So I'm going to begin mixing this, and when I get it to the right consistency, we'll get you to come have a close look at it, and you can see what I'm talking about. So if you have a look, this is getting very close. It looks like really like soft and it stays all together. Now, when I say really close, I've left this to sit for the 10 minutes in the past, and then when I come back to mix it up, it's still quite dry. So with how I got it right now, it would be perfect using grout if it stayed like this, but after the 10-minute chemical reaction that happens, it'll be a little too dry. So I'm just gonna add one more round of water, and then we'll let this sit for the 10 more minutes. See how the material is jiggling around? That is like the perfect mix right there. Just give it a touch and it jiggles the whole pile as one, is what you want to see for properly mixed sanded grout. Now I'm going to let it sit for 10 minutes. Okay, so I've let my grout set for the 10 minutes. Now I'm just going to run my drill in there one more time, mix it all up. Again, my product says no water added at this point, so it's just a nice mix with the drill to break it all up again, and then I'll proceed with starting to insert it in the grout joints. So got my ready to go charcoal grout. You can see it's got a nice consistency, it shakes really well, and it's holding together. So I've got a rubber float. It's made of rubber. When I grout, I'm going to apply my grout on a 45-degree angle, pressing it into the joint. So hold the trowel on a 45 and also go on a 45 motion on all these joints. If you're going just like this, it's not gonna fill into the joint. If you're going this way against the joint, it hits the side and fills in. So this is what I do is just hold on the 45, smear it through, and then you can hold it more on a 90 to scrape off the extra grout once your joint is filled enough. I like to use a putty knife. Once I've got my joints looking good and full, I just take it and slide off extra grout that's lying around. I find a putty knife really cleans it up a lot, which will save you in your washing. Once you've got this all grouted, you wait about 10 minutes. Then you start washing it with sponges. The sponge cleans off all the extra grout, and it also contours the grout down a little bit so that it's not right flush with the surface. And I've also got some rubber gloves to protect my hands. Grout's really corrosive to your hands. They get super dry if you just do it with bare hands. And then I've just got a couple of rags. So after I've done my sponging to clean up all the joints, I'm supposed to let the floor sit for an hour or two to harden up, and then I come in here and clean the grout haze that's on top of the tiles. So it's gonna look a little dirty at the start. Once the grout is set into the joints, I come in here and I work a lot of time to get the haze off the top of the tiles. So I'm ready to start. I'm gonna start in this section here. Another thing I find this putty knife is really handy to grab the grout out of the pails so that you're not pouring it out or making a mess with it. So just grab some grout. Got my rubber float. Up against the walls, I tend to use this edge. On the joints, I use this edge. So just grab some grout and start squeezing it into the joints. So you see how I'm going on the nice angle. I'm just combing it through, and it's filling those joints right up to the top. That's exactly what you want to see. Once I get out of this smaller area, I'll start using the bigger edge of my trowel. Again, always going on that cross angle to the joint allows to really flow in there. Okay, so one thing that I would really like to mention at this point, because you've seen me just grout around my toilet flange tightly, not such a big deal here because I'm in a basement, so my underneath the tile is concrete, so if there is a water leak from the toilet, it's not really going to go anywhere, and I will see water coming out on the surface of my tiles. If you're tiling in an area where there's wood, if you don't fill in that joint that's beside your flange nice, or silicone it or do something with it, you can have a small toilet leak for 15 years that just drips a little bit, but then falls down in between so that you never see it. So if you fill that void in with grout, and there is a small leak with your toilet, the water won't get down past the flange, it will show up on the surface of your tiles, and you'll know you have a problem with your toilet. So it's a very good idea to make sure you fill around the flange completely, and then just down the road you'll know if you've got a leak on your toilet or not. Okay, that section is looking really good and full. I'm gonna take my putty knife now. Just clean up the extra. In my opinion, this step is really valuable because it just saves you everything you can scrape off at this point. You don't have to clean off with the water. So. Okay, so I've been grouting for about 10 minutes now. The product that I'm using recommends that you only spread out what you can spread out in 30 minutes. If you're waiting more than 30 minutes to do your wipe down of your tile, you might miss your chance to be able to even clean the tiles off. I had an earlier job when I was just starting to do this stuff on my own. It was in my first house that I built. I had a helper helping me back then. We mixed a giant pail of grout and we went through the house in a bunch of different areas, trying to get as much of it in the walls as we could and in the floors. All of it turned out pretty good except for the last washroom that we didn't get back to for like about an hour. It was a slate stone, which has lots of clefts and ridges on it and stuff like that. Basically, the grout dried as a full wall of grout. I wasn't able to salvage it. I had to rip out all the drywall and retile again. So read what it says in your on your manufacturer's recommendation for to start wash time and follow that pretty precisely. So I'm gonna proceed by finishing this floor. I'll be under my 30 minutes and then I'll probably start washing it in at that area that I've started on. By the time I get here, it'll be that 30 minutes for this area too. So. The joint along my tile edge here is too small to try to force it in with the rubber trowel. So I'm just gonna use my hand, my rubber glove, just to work some grout into that line as well. Okay, so it looks nice and full, so I'm just gonna spend some time now cleaning off as much extra grout as I can, so that my when I set up to start washing, I've got a lot less washing to do. So. See, that's a lot of extra grout to scrape off. That would take me another extra pail just to wash this, so definitely worth the time to go through and do this. Okay, so I just cleaned off some extra that got onto the concrete because I'm staining that floor. Don't really want any on it. I should have probably taped it off just so it was better. But anyways, now I've got 5-gallon pails full of clean water. I've got a nice sponge. I'm just going to take the pail in with me and clean off the surface of the tiles. When I'm wiping the sponge over top of the grout joint, I'm very cautious not to dig the sponge down in to make it too deep. But I still have to wipe over top of it to kind of contour the joint a little bit better. So you can play with it and get them looking however you want. If you want them to be more caved down, then you wipe it some more and it'll kind of wipe out the grout a little bit. If you want it nice and flush to the top, just wipe it a few times. So I'm gonna see how clean this floor comes with one pail and sponging, but I might have to bring in another pail just to clean it up a little bit more. And then I'll let this dry for hour or two and come in and clean the haze off the tiles. So can you see this little deficiency with the grout right in front of my finger? Not only are you trying to clean the grout off the surface of the tile, when you're using your sponge, you're actually cleaning that joint up. So if you see that little hole that's there, when I come over it a few times, there, gone. So you're actually individually looking at each line and contouring that grout to what you're going to be happy with when it dries.